Let's rewind back to a time when the world was obsessed with fitness, drugs, and sleazy sex. The 80s. Before Tony Stark put on the suit, or Steve Rogers injected the serum, there was another name on the lips of the innocent and that struck fear into the hearts of bad guys. The Toxic Avenger.
Hello there, you loose units. I'm, of course, your host, Andrew Isles, and welcome to the first pseudo-spin-off review show, Spicy Boy Rewind Reviews, where we look at cult classic films that for some reason slipped under the radar for me and haven't seen it, and here I'm reviewing it with fresh eyes, and today's review is about The Toxic Avenger. Released in 1984, directed by both Michael Hirst and Lloyd Kaufman, who were the founders of Troma Entertainment. This is a Troma film, and for those of you who don't know, they were the sort of like style of exploitation films that were kind of anti-cinema in a way. It was all gross, sleazy, and offensive, sticking it to the pretentious, flatulent, sniffing critics of the 80s. It's also the scene where James Gunn got his start. This film, The Toxic Avenger, is based around Geek Melvin, who is employed by the local fitness club as the mop expert, or cleaner if you will. And the fitness club and the whole town is based in Tromaville. As subtle as a sledgehammer movie, and it's of course not until about the 6-minute mark where we get our first obligatory shot of titties. The 80s. He's bullied by a gang of psychopaths at the local fitness club who get their kicks by running over small children late at night. And of course we see all this in the most gruesome way possible. Yep, that's Troma. They coax Melvin into a prank where he ends up head first in some toxic waste. And the effects turn him into a gruesome creature that's a mix between Melted Emil from RoboCop and Sloth from the Goonies. Everyone in Tromaville is an absolute psychopath. They're all narcissistic and horrible, horrible people. No one is redeemable, even the gluttonous, corrupt mayor of the town. So, pretty much modern-day Los Angeles. Melvin then becomes a vigilante as the Toxic Avenger, stopping robberies and assaults late at night, violently murdering bad people, and the press love him for it. He even saves a blind woman at one point whose dog is brutally murdered on camera. Ease up, John Wick, ease up. And then he begins to date her. This film is all kinds of fucked up. I don't know if I can accurately explain Troma's cinema for those who haven't seen it, but I'll give it a go. Troma's cinema oozes with sleaze and gore. You get some gruesomely squashed children in this, crushed heads, murdered dogs, schoolyard sex jokes a go-go. It's absolutely trash cinema, enough to give a young Peter Jackson a stiffy. This film is severely politically incorrect, and purposely so. That's Troma. Filled with racial slurs, homophobic insults, cheesy humour, gross-out jokes, gory stunts and creature effects, it's enough to make a Twitter blue checkmark vomit blood. And even then, they would film it. This movie, The Toxic Avenger, is riddled with continuity errors, a story structured in ADHD, scenes that would make even Ricky Gervais cringe, and it's very clear that everyone in front of the camera and behind is on copious amounts of coke. The 80s. The acting is so bad and severely over the top, so much that it will make Samurai Cop blush. But everyone in this film is super self-aware of what kind of movie they're in and really playing up for the camera. They have the right tone and having a bloody blast, and it works. The ADR for Toxic Avenger himself is fucking horrendous. It's so bad. They're not even trying to blend it. It's obviously pre-recorded or recorded afterwards in a dark little room somewhere. It's pretty much narration. But then there's other scenes where the Toxic Avenger talks in front of the camera, and it's just the actor and the creature effects talking, and they just use that in the shot. There's no continuity. I loved the look of this film, I have to admit. It was really gritty and sweaty and very much low-budget 80s, and I fucking love that. Like, think shots out of No Retreat, No Surrender, or the later Death Wish films. It's really good and fantastic to see something that's not super polished for once. We get lo-fi, practical gore effects and some of the most gruesome kills that we could have got from back in the day. The 80s. My first introduction to the character of the Toxic Avenger was in the 90s cartoon series called The Toxic Crusaders. It's actually interesting to see back in the day how many kids' cartoons were based on R-rated movies, because there was quite a few. We had Rambo, RoboCop, Conan the Barbarian, and Swamp Thing, just to name a few. And of course, Toxic Avenger, to add on to that list, proving the kids back in the day weren't pussies. This is the kind of film that my dad would have brought home from work back in the day and watched it, because my dad worked in a tattoo parlor and there was a lot of interesting people that frequented that shop came in with their recommendations for film. And that seems to me was just like the first time I was shown cult films. So Black Spine VHS cult cinema goes all the way back to my childhood. Probably explains a lot about me as a person now. But my dad would bring home these movies, I would sneakily watch them, or he just didn't give a shit, and I used to sit there on the carpet and watch these movies. Movies like Meet the Feebles, The Blood Heroes, and Hardware, just to name a few. I have a soft spot for trashy 80s cinema. Movies like Grindhouse, drive-in cultured films, Ozploitation, low-budget action horror sci-fi is kind of my jam, and I dig it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love award-winning films too, and a good story and good acting, but sometimes you just want to switch off and watch some absolute trash. Troma had its own movement, and it's still going to this day. The Toxic Avenger walked so that Psycho Gorman could run. This is trash cinema at its finest. It is cult cinema, a cult classic, really bad taste, and if you're easily offended, go watch Frozen. Did I like this film? Yes, I think I was in the right mindset when I watched it, just a little bit of sprinkle of chaos that I was into. And yeah, it's not for everyone. Troma is definitely not for everyone. But if you like cult classic cinema and you're not easily offended, go watch it, if you haven't already. There's many sequels, and yes, I will be watching them after this, of course, just to see how they played out. And what boundaries they're going to push in the later ones. Guys, write down below if you're a fan of The Toxic Avenger, which one is your favourite? There's a few sequels, as I just mentioned. Or, what is your favourite Troma film? If I haven't seen it, then I will definitely watch it. And of course, if you've made it this far into the episode, please give us a thumbs up, because your love and support makes me feel good inside. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe icon, because we give out episodes weekly. And we'll see you next week for the next review. And until then, stay spooky, kids.